Hey everyone, and welcome to the Women of War podcast, where we dive into the untold stories of women's bravery, struggles, and resilience in the midst of conflict. I am your host, Megan, and together we'll explore the powerful narratives of women who've stood on the front lines, those who have been caught in the crossfires, and the lasting impact war has had on their lives. From ancient warriors to modern day heroes, we'll uncover the roles women have played in shaping history throughout war and peace. So grab your headphones and let's embark on this journey to hear the voices of women who fought battles both seen and unseen. Get ready for an eye-opening experience on the Women of War podcast. On this episode and the episode for next week, I'll be covering two different women who decided to hang up their dresses and petticoats and trade them for pants and combat. The first lady we'll be discussing is Hannah Snell. She lived from 1723 to 1792. Hannah Snell, born on April 23, 1723, in Rochester, England, was the youngest of her siblings. Despite inheriting wealth from her grandfather, she only learned to read, earning her the nickname Young Amazon Snell for her spirited nature. She was orphaned at 17 and moved to London to live with her sister. She then got married to James Sampson, which brought her hardships as he squandered their resources and abandoned her during her pregnancy. After her daughter's death, she decided to disguise herself as her brother-in-law and enlist in the military to search for her husband, only to discover he had been executed. She then joined John Guise's regiment, and she fought in the Duke of Cumberland's army against Bonnie Prince Charlie. When Hannah Snell pretended to be James Gray, who was 25 years old, as she joined the General Guise's regiment in 1747, she became very good at military stuff during her training. But then she got in some trouble with her sergeant named Davis. He was mad because she wouldn't help him do some bad things, and they punished her by whipping her 500 times. After this, she left the army. She got hurt a lot during her battles, and even shot in the groin and the leg 5 times. After one battle, she went to a hospital where she either took out the bullet herself or got help from a local lady. She went back to her ship and sailed to Bombay. Her shipmates started to think something was odd because she didn't shave, and they called her Miss Molly Gray. So she started flirting with ladies to hide the fact that she was, in fact, a woman. When she got back to London, she told everyone that she was, in fact, actually a woman, and they were all surprised. She ended up writing a book about her adventures and even performed military drills on stage. She got a pension for her service, which was very rare back then. After getting her pension, Snell retired and ran a pub. It was said to be called the Female Warrior or the Widow in Masquerade, but it did not last long. Then in the mid-1750s, she moved to Newbury in Berkshire, and she married Richard Eylis there in 1759. She had 2 kids. Later in 1772, she married Richard Hapgood from Wilford, Berkshire, and they moved to the Midlands. By 1785, she was living with her son George Spence Eylis in Strokes, Newington. In 1791, she suddenly got mentally sick and was placed in Bethlehem Hospital on August 20th, 1791, and died on February 8th, 1792. She is buried at Chelsea Hospital. Wow, to join the military on a journey to find your runaway husband, who to find out was later executed, to fight in a war, then leave the military after being given 500 lashes, to marry two men both named Richard, and open up a bar. She definitely lived her life. She did not let life pass her by. That is for sure. Next up is Deborah Sampson, who lived from 1760 to 1827. Deborah Sampson Garnett was born in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1760. She dressed up as a man named Robert Shirtliff and joined the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. She fought for 17 months until her secret was revealed when she got sick in Philadelphia in 1783. She was honorably discharged after leaving the army. She married Benjamin Garnett in 1785. Later in 1802, she became one of the first women to give talks about her experiences in the war. She passed away in Sharon, Massachusetts in 1827. In 1983, she was declared the official heroine of Massachusetts. And in 1985, she was honored with the commemorative medal by the United States Capitol Historical Society. Alright, so Deborah Sampson was born on December 17th, 1760 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Her family had a historical home where her grandparents lived, and it still exists today. Her dad was named Jonathan Sampson, and her mom's name was Deborah Bradford. She had several siblings, and Deborah's family had a connection with William Bradford, who was an important figure in the Plymouth colony. Her family believed her dad had died in a shipwreck, but evidence suggests he left them and moved to Maine, where he had another family there. After her dad left, Deborah's mom couldn't take care of all the kids, so they were sent to live with different relatives. Deborah ended up with a woman named Mary Prince Thatcher, who was very old. She might have learned to read while living with her. Later, she went to live with the Thomas family and worked as an indigent servant. Even though she wasn't sent to school, she learned from the Thomas children. Where she finished her service, she taught school during the summers and worked as a weaver in the winters. She was skilled at weaving and woodworking, making things like stools and sleds. She was also sold items like pie crumpers. Sampson was quite tall for her time, standing around 5'7" to 8 inches tall. This was taller than most men and women back then. Her biographer, Herman Mann, described her as not being thin and noted that she was small, which helped conceal that she was a woman. With her clothes in uniform. She also mentioned that her face was not considered conventionally beautiful. A neighbor who knew her in later years said that she had plain features. One of her descendants, Pauline Monk Wise, was thought to strongly resemble her based on a comparison of their physical appearance and height. Sampson's tall, sturdy build and less delicate features helped her pass as a man during her time in the army. In early 1782, Sampson dressed as a man named Timothy Dyer and joined the army unit in Middleburg, Massachusetts. She received a bonus but did not show up to meet her company as planned. She was discovered when somebody recognized her, but she didn't face further punishment from the army, though her church withdrew its fellowship. In May 1782, she enlisted again, this time as Robert Shirtliff in Oxford, Massachusetts, joining an elite light infantry company. This group was chosen for their above-average size and strength, making it easier for Sampson to pass as a man. She participated in a skirmish in New York in June or July of 1782, where she was injured but refused medical help for fear of revealing her gender. Later, in Philadelphia, her true identity was discovered by a doctor, but he kept it secret and helped her recover. After the war ended, she was honorably discharged in October 1783. Her service as Robert Shirtliff is recorded in official documents. After her military service, Sampson tied the knot with Benjamin Granite, a farmer from Sharon, Massachusetts, on April 7th, 1785. In Massachusetts, as a married woman, she experienced life on the farm, tending to the household duties. A couple had 4 children, all married patients. They also adopted Susanna Baker Shepherd after she became an orphan. They resided with Benjamin's father on the family farm, but faced challenges due to its smaller size and overworked land, which limited their success. In January 1792, Sampson appealed to the Massachusetts state's legislation to receive the pay she was owed by the army, which had been withheld because she was a woman. Her petition was granted, and Governor John Hancock signed it, awarding her £34 plus interest from her 1783 discharge. In 1797, Herman Mann published her biography titled The Female Review, Life of Deborah Sampson, the Female Soldier in the War of Revolution. Starting in 1802, Sampson began giving lectures about her wartime experience. After speaking about traditional gender roles for women, she would return to the stage in her army uniform and perform military drills to demonstrate her skills. Despite these engagements, she and her husband struggled to cover their expenses and often had to borrow money from family and friends like Paul Revere. She and her husband struggled to cover their expenses and often had to borrow money from family and friends like Paul Revere. Revere advocated for her, writing letters to government officials to request a pension for her military service and injuries. In 1804, Revere wrote to the U.S. Representative William on Sampson's behalf, emphasizing her character and requesting a pension. Congress approved her request on March 11, 1805, placing her on the Massachusetts invalid pension roll at a rate of $4 a month. In 1806, Sampson wrote to Revere again asking for a loan due to her family's illnesses. Revere provided the requested amount, and in 1809 she petitioned Congress to modify her petition to start from her discharge in 1783. Although initially denied, her petition was approved in 1816 and granted her $76.80 a year. With this pension, she was able to repay her loans and improve the family farm. Sampson died of yellow fever on April 29, 1827. She was buried at Rock Ridge Cemetery in Sharon, Massachusetts. 4 years following Sampson's passing, her husband Benjamin Grant appealed to Congress for a pension as the spouse of a veteran. In 1837, the committee responsible for reviewing his petition declared that no other instance of a female heroism, loyalty, and bravery could be found in the history of the Revolution. Although Grant was granted a petition, he unfortunately passed away before he could receive it. While these women decided to dress up as men, join the military, and they were really good at everything that they had to do in the military. They were good at war. And then came home, became wives and mothers, and lived their lives. And they lived more life than probably anyone else during their time that they knew. And so these women are very courageous for what they did. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, thank you. This is Megan signing off with Women of Word Podcast. Don't forget to like, love, subscribe, comment, all those things. It really does help the podcast grow, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank y'all.